That fall, the weather turned unusually cold. I lived on a quiet suburban street where every house looked almost identical to Stories, a garage, a small patch of grass out front. I'd been there 7 years, always thinking it was a calm and safe neighborhood. Then Mr. Lawson moved in across the street. The first time I saw him was on a Tuesday afternoon. I was washing my car in the driveway when a black pickup pulled up opposite my house. He stepped out wearing a baseball cap, moving slowly, carrying box after box into the house. What struck me as odd was that there was no moving truck, no friends, no movers, just him. He spent the whole afternoon going back and forth, and even after night fell, he never turned on a single light. The place stayed completely dark, like no one was living there. My wife, Marissa, joked, maybe he's trying to save on the electric bill. But after a few days, I started noticing things that didn't feel like jokes anymore. Every night around 3 in the morning, his front door would open. Not from the wind, someone opened it from inside. I could hear it clearly. At first, I thought maybe it was a pet, but it wasn't. The timing was too exact, the motion too deliberate. The door would open, pause a few seconds, then close again. One night, curiosity got the better of me. I peeked out through the blinds and saw him standing there, at the doorway, staring out toward the street. He wasn't wearing a coat. The wind was strong, but he just stood still. The next morning, I asked if he had trouble sleeping. He smiled faintly and said, "Just an early riser." That smile chilled me, not because of what he said, but because it didn't feel like a real smile. It looked rehearsed, like he was imitating what people do. Then there was the grass in his yard. He never mowed it, but it never grew. The whole lawn looked perfectly trimmed, as if frozen in time. Marissa thought it might be some kind of herbicide, but the air around his house didn't smell like chemicals, it smelled faintly like burnt plastic. One evening, while walking my dog, I passed his backyard and noticed the back door was cracked open. I heard a sound coming from inside, low, rhythmic, almost like chanting. It wasn't words, just a deep, droning tone that rose and fell. My dog suddenly pulled back. "It's for standing up." I didn't wait around, I dragged it home. That's when I started thinking maybe Lawson wasn't just weird. Maybe he wasn't normal. He never put out trash cans, yet every night a car would pull up to his house, stay for 10 minutes, then leave. Different cars each time, white vans, small trucks, never the same one twice. I'd see someone go inside, but never see anyone come out. I thought about calling the cops, but what would I say? Then one evening, the mailman accidentally left one of my packages at his doorstep. When I came home, I went to retrieve it. The moment I stepped onto his walkway, the porch light flicked on. In that yellow glow, I noticed a row of small glass bottles lined neatly by the door. Each one was filled with some dark brown liquid and labeled with old, yellowed paper covered in handwriting I couldn't read. I grabbed my package and walked away fast, my skin prickling. After that, I avoided that side of the street. But somehow, I could always feel his eyes on me. Sometimes when I took the trash out at night, all the houses would be dark except his. Through his window, I could see a faint, flickering light like a candle. His shadow moved across the wall, hands rising and falling in slow, deliberate motions, like he was making signs in the air. I don't have any particular religion, but I started praying anyway. I couldn't sleep. I kept waking up in the dark, certain someone was standing just outside the door. I even installed a camera, but every night between 2 and 3 a.m. the footage would glitch into static. One night, Marissa heard footsteps in our backyard. I went out with a flashlight but found nothing. The next morning, there was a small patch of freshly dug soil, round, shallow. Like someone buried something and changed their mind. I dug it up. Found nothing, just blackened dirt that smelled sour and metallic. A few days later at the supermarket, I met an old woman who'd lived in the neighborhood for decades. When I mentioned I lived across from Lawson, her face changed immediately. She said that house had a history. The previous owner was a retired clergyman who moved out suddenly one night, without explanation. Then she whispered, "People say there are shadows that walk in there after dark." I laughed it off, but my stomach turned cold. Things got worse. One night after work, I saw Lawson standing in the middle of the street. His arms were raised toward the sky, his lips moving. The wind was howling so loud, I could barely close my car door. Yet he didn't seem to notice me. When my headlights swept over him, he turned. His mouth was still moving, but no sound came out. I asked what he was doing. He said, "Some things need balance." I had no idea what that meant. A few nights later, the air around our house started smelling burnt again. It happened every night at 9, lasting 10 or 15 minutes. I followed the scent and realized it came from his chimney. But his house was dark, no cooking sounds, no lights, no movement. One night, after Marissa went to bed, I couldn't stand it anymore. I took a flashlight and went outside. The street was empty. The air was wet and heavy. The closer I got to his house, the thicker that burnt smell became. I went around the back and saw a dim red light flickering through the window. I looked inside. The walls were covered in red symbols. Black candles lined a table, their flames bending in the draft. In the center was a metal basin with something burning inside. Smoke curled up. Lawson stood beside it, murmuring from a thick old book. My foot snapped a branch, the flames flickered, and he looked up straight at the window. I bolted home. My heart felt like it was going to explode. I didn't tell Marissa. But from that night on, I knew whatever he wasn't human in the way we are. A week later, cats began disappearing around the neighborhood. Flyers went up everywhere. Elliot's orange cat, the black cat from next door, gone. Even our dog grew uneasy, growling toward Lawson's house every night. One night, I woke to a sound outside, someone humming, low and tuneless. I went to the window and saw his front door half open, light spilling out. A cardboard box sat on the porch. By morning, it was gone. Only a black, scorched ring was left on the concrete. A few days later, the mailman told me he refused to deliver to that address anymore. Said the man asked him if he knew where the door beneath the ground was. That's when I started thinking about moving. One Saturday afternoon, while I was mowing the lawn, I looked up and saw him standing at his window. The curtain was half drawn, his face pressed against the glass. He didn't move, just stared. I tried to ignore it, kept mowing, but I could feel his gaze on me the entire time. That night, I dreamt he knocked on my door. In the dream, he said, "Everything you see belongs to me." I woke up drenched in sweat. After that, strange things started happening inside our house. Grey powder appeared at the front door. The garden hose would turn on by itself. Marissa swore she heard whispers from the basement. When I checked, I found chalk markings on the floor, symbols like the ones I'd seen on his walls. I called the police. They searched the place and said it was probably kids messing around. That night, the markings came back in a different spot. I talked to a lawyer about selling the house, but with the mortgage, we were stuck. I felt like I was slowly losing my mind. Then came the storm. That night, the wind roared against the windows. I woke up to the sound of voices across the street, many voices, all whispering at once. Through the rain, I saw a red glow flickering inside Lawson's house. The walls looked like they were trembling. I grabbed my raincoat and flashlight and stepped outside. The wind was so strong I could barely stand. As I neared his yard, I heard a rasping cry from inside, like someone shouting underwater. Then, a crash, the lights went out. The front door swung open by itself. Inside was total darkness, but a faint light pulsed from beneath the floorboards, like fire buried underground. I didn't go in. I turned and ran home, locked the door, and didn't sleep till morning. By sunrise, the street was full of police and fire trucks. Someone had reported smoke. They broke into the house, but it was empty. No fire, no furniture, no Lawson. Just walls blackened with soot, and a smell they couldn't identify, something between tar and blood. The neighbors said he must have moved out in the night, but nobody saw a moving truck. Weeks passed, the street went quiet again. But I know it's not over, because every night, around 3 a.m, our doorknob turns softly, like someone's testing it. The camera only shows static. I haven't seen Lawson since. But sometimes, in my dreams, I still hear him whispering close to my ear. I still live here. I mow the lawn every week, but no matter how the seasons change, the grass across the street never grows. It stays perfectly flat, perfectly green, and when the wind picks up at night, all that grass bends the same way, like something underneath is breathing. I tell myself it's just wind, just coincidence. But sometimes, before I turn out the lights, I catch a faint reflection in the window across the street. In that empty house, a single candle flickers back,